Number 9 has a little bit different situation than we had in number 6 and number 8. We still have those parallel lines, but this is more like number 1, where I actually have 2 different transversals I could pick from, and it doesn't matter which one you choose. As a matter of fact, you could choose to use them both. I'm not going to. I'm just going to pick one of them. I'm going to pick YW. You could easily pick VZ, and it's going to change things just a little bit, but it will still work. Everything will still work out just fine. So I'm going to mark these angles that I've highlighted on both sides as congruent because they are alternate interior. So now in each triangle, I have one side and one angle, one side and one angle. So I'm looking for that third piece of information. I could mark VZ and then look for alternate interior angles there, but I'm just going to mark vertical angles because that's an easier one for me to see. And now in each triangle, I have 2 angles and a side, 2 angles and a side, and the side is not included between the 2 angles. It does not connect them. So I'm going to write this with the side not in between the 2 angles. Remember, you could also write it the other direction, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that's one of our things that works. And so we're going to go ahead and fill out this triangle congruent statement. So they named their triangle XVW. So they started at X. We're going to have to start at X because those angles are congruent. But then I've got to go up here. They went up to V. So V is not congruent to Y. So I'm not going to go XY. I have to go XZ. So XZ. And then they went across side VW. So we're at Z. We're going to go to Y. ZY. XZY is how we would name that. And then we have our name of our triangle and our congruence conjecture, and that's all we need for this one. Number 10, again, we see those parallel lines, but much like number 9, this one's going to be more of that I can choose either line to use as my transversal, and everything's going to work out fine. So I'm going to choose AE. Again, I could easily choose BD, and everything will work out just fine. I'm just not doing that in this case. So I'm going to mark angle A congruent to angle E. And then again, just because it's easy, I'm going to pick these vertical angles right here. And then when I look at my triangles, I have 2 angles and one side in each triangle. And I'll notice that in each triangle, the side connects the 2 angles. It is included between the 2 angles. And so when I write this, the side is going to come between the 2 angles. And since that's one of my things that works, I'm going to fill out this triangle congruence. So they said ECD. So I need to start at the angle that's congruent to E, which is A over here. And then I'm going to go to C because that's the direction they went. And then we're going to end at B. And that's that triangle congruence conjecture and name. Number 11 gives us some information up here, and we've got to remember some things. So again, I'm going to kind of highlight some things. We've got PS here, so I'm going to highlight PS. Now I have to remember that we've got what an angle bisector is. So an angle bisector is something that cuts an angle in half, and specifically they tell me QPR should be cut in half. So this is that angle that we're looking at. QPR should be the one that's cut in half. So it's an angle bisector this time, not a side bisector. So I can't say anything about this side over here that is QR, but I can say that this angle, QPR, gets cut in half, so each of those pieces are congruent. That's what it means to have an angle bisector. And then because this angle right here is 90, I obviously know that this guy over here is 90 because they are a linear pair. They add to 180. And then that's only 2 angles in each triangle. I don't actually know anything else about what's happening here, except that they have a shared side. And so I'm going to mark that shared side congruent. So as I look here, I've got these 2 angles in each triangle, and I've got one side. And that side is included between the 2 angles. It does connect the 2 angles. So I'm going to write the side in the middle. That's one of our conjectures that works. And so I'm going to fill out this congruence statement. So they said PQS. So we are going to say PRS. And we have our triangle congruence statement filled out and our congruence conjecture. This last one has a lot of triangles, and sometimes it can get tough to keep track of what the heck I'm talking about. So when that's the case, I'll often pick up two different colored highlighters, and I'll highlight, first of all, the triangle they gave me. So they gave me triangle ACN. So I'm going to highlight triangle ACN. That way I can just keep that triangle kind of in my mind. And I might actually, sometimes, I might just attempt to like redraw it off to the side, just so that I have a sense of what I have. So I notice I've got a 90-degree marking here at C, and I've got this marking right here. And then that way I have just kind of a sense of what I'm looking at. And then I got to find a triangle that I think they're probably looking at and that they're trying to ask me to prove congruent. And my sense of that is that this is this guy right here. Okay, so again, I'm going to just kind of pull that off over here, and I'm going to try and draw it. Not do a very good job, but it's okay. So I think it's ARN, and I see that I've got that marking there and that marking there. And if I've drawn them separately, it's a little easier for me to see kind of what I'm looking at. And I can see that I have two angles marked in each triangle, which is great, but that's not enough. And so I have to look for those things. Now, here's the thing. Drawing them separately helps me realize that there are not like these vertical angles. I see people want to mark those all the time, but that's not actually part of our triangles. It's not part of what makes our triangles, makes our triangle, either my green triangle or my blue triangle. But what I do notice is down here, notice that this side AN, notice I used side AN here and I used side AN here. It is a shared side. It looks a little different than the other shared sides that we've talked about, but it is a shared side. Side AN doesn't get to change length as I move from one triangle to the other. And so I get to mark it congruent to itself, and that's really that third piece of information. And now when I look at these, I can see that I have two angles in each triangle and one side in each triangle. And the side does not connect the two angles, so it's not included. So I can write it as side angle angle or angle angle side. Remember, they are exactly the same thing, so you only need one of them. And that is one of my congruence conjectures that works. So they named their triangle ACN. So they went from A to C. So we have to think about the angle that's congruent to A over here is N, right? And then the angle that's congruent to C is R. And then, of course, the last letter is going to be A in this green triangle. But hopefully you guys can see how maybe highlighting those and kind of pulling them apart makes it a little easier to tell what parts you need. The only tricky part is this side down here. We haven't seen that before. That's the entirety of these problems, so you guys can make a good attempt on your assignment now. Good luck.